Thank you so much for joining me. You are watching The Kim Iverson Show. 2016 is undoubtedly, when you look back at the elections of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, was an absolute success for both men. Even though Bernie Sanders did not get the nomination in 2016, he is widely accused of being one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton lost. And I think when we reflect back at the campaigns of both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in 2016, we'll see that there is a common denominator that ultimately, when we fast forward and we look at their campaigns in 2020, we see that there was a big difference, and 2020 ultimately was an absolute bust, I think, in more ways than one for all of us. But the 2020 campaigns of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, and even just the Democrats in general, really cost all of them the election. Even though Democrats won the White House, technically with Joe Biden, I understand he hasn't been certified yet, but I think we can all agree at this point that odds are Joe Biden will be certified as president-elect of the United States. Even though they did win ultimately the White House, they did lose a lot of seats in the House, and Donald Trump obviously losing the election, and Bernie Sanders not picking up the steam that he thought he would get in his 2020 primary campaign. So looking back, I think it's important to see where in 2016 the commonalities were between the Trump and Bernie campaign, and in 2020 where the commonalities were in all of these failed campaigns. When we look at 2016, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders ran on actually a really similar message. I know, believe it or not, people tend to think that Donald Trump is the absolute antithesis to anything progressive, but the reality of it is Donald Trump ran on many of the same platform positions as Bernie Sanders. For example, both men opposed the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. In 2016, Bernie Sanders issued a statement saying the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a disastrous trade agreement designed to protect the interests of the largest multinational corporations at the expense of workers, consumers, the environment, and the foundations of American democracy. Now, Trump agreed, but of course he used his Trumpian language, saying the TPP was the continuing rape of our country, and that this wave of globalization has wiped out totally our middle class. Both men ran on maintaining or expanding Social Security, believe it or not. I know a lot of people in the media over the last 4 years said that Trump was going to be cutting Social Security, but he actually never said any such thing. In 2016, Trump said he wouldn't touch Social Security. Instead, he claimed his plan to boost economic growth to at least 4% would take care of Social Security's long-term problems. Bernie Sanders also ran on expanding Social Security, saying that he would do it by increasing taxes on the wealthy. Both men were supportive of upper income tax hikes. Both claimed that they would close tax loopholes for the rich and increase overall taxes. Now, of course, we have 4 years of hindsight of Donald Trump, so we can look back at his administration and see what he actually accomplished versus what he didn't. And he somewhat closed some tax loopholes. It was more than the Obama administration did for sure, but it didn't go all the way to the level of what his campaign promised. However, we're looking right now at the campaigns of 2016, not actually the record of Donald Trump after 2020. We're looking specifically at the campaigns to see that common denominator, to see where was the failing in 2020. Both men openly accused American politicians as being corporate sellouts. That was a big message for both men during the campaign. Both opposed the Iraq War. They opposed wars in general that were needless, believing the money spent on these endless wars could be better put to use domestically. Both expressed worry that increased immigration could depress working class wages. So yes, Donald Trump ran on that build the wall, and they're letting in all of these criminals at the border. He ran on much more crass language. When you look at, obviously, Trump's demeanor, the way he talks, the language he uses, he's extremely crass compared to Bernie Sanders, who is just more boisterous in his way of speaking. But at the end of the day, the policy positions were fundamentally the same. Both expressed that immigration was going to cause a problem for Americans' working class. Both supported single-payer health care. Yes, believe it or not, Donald Trump actually spent decades, and there is video evidence of this over and over and over, championing universal health care and single-payer system. Now, obviously, as a Republican candidate, even though I don't think any of us can really say he was a true Republican, even Republicans were saying he wasn't a Republican. In fact, Rick Perry, I believe it was saying in interviews during Trump's during the primary run when Trump was going for that Republican nomination, they were demonizing Trump, saying, how could anybody be like Donald Trump for universal health care or single-payer health care and call themselves a Republican? Well, Trump did. And he's got a decades-long record of actually saying he was for universal single-payer systems. Now, we don't know when he was in office, by the way. He never revealed what his new medical plan would be. He just kept saying we needed to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And then when people would press him on what would you replace it with, he never gave an answer. It leaves me a bit suspicious, knowing the fact that he had this record of universal health care that he was promoting for years and years and years on appearances on Larry King and appearances on the nightly talk shows. It does lead me to wonder if he was just holding that one close to his chest. And if there was a repeal of the ACA, he would come out with some sort of single-payer health care. Yeah, probably a pipe dream, probably wouldn't have happened, but one can think, maybe. Obviously, single-payer health care, Medicare for all, was Bernie Sanders' absolute #1 battle cry. So both men in 2016 ran on draining the swamp using various different language, protecting jobs for American workers, and fighting for the best interests of Americans. That was a winning campaign message in 2016. Both men ran on those messages, and both men had shockingly surprising, really dominant campaigns. Bernie Sanders, though he didn't get that primary nomination, still, like I said, was blamed for Hillary Clinton's loss. He was a surprising underdog candidate who grew an entire movement from his 2016 campaign. Donald Trump obviously shocked the world by winning the presidency. So now let's fast forward to 2020 and look at what happened. What happened? Where did these movements go? Because when you look at the campaign messaging for 2020, everybody got sucked into culture. They got sucked into the culture war fights. They got sucked into the mudslinging. From Bernie Sanders shifting his message from 2016, talking about Medicare for all and workers' rights and helping the American middle class, to we've got to fight racism, bigotry, xenophobia, and sexism. That was Bernie Sanders' new rallying cry for 2020, and I think that largely hurt him. He lost a lot of people who were saying, wait a minute, you were once for me talking about the kitchen table issues, and now all of a sudden you're saying that this country is gone into a path of racism, xenophobia, sexism, and misogyny, and we must fight this. That Donald Trump is an existential threat to our society because he's all of these bad things. Bernie Sanders shifted his message from 2016 to this new message in 2020, and I think it could be argued that it largely hurt him, especially when you look at the outcomes of the Democratic House races and the outcome for Donald Trump. All of them got into this mudslinging campaign messaging. All of them did it. And it started with Democrats could not believe what was happening during the 2016 campaign. And it wasn't just Donald Trump winning. It was the fact he got the Republican nomination and the fact that he was, in so many ways, not the person we wanted to represent our country. From his past sexual exploits with women and crass talk, his behavior towards women, from his behavior and discussion towards people of color, his talk about people on this southern side of our U.S. border. He was extremely crass, shocking, and many of us, myself included, could not believe that somebody who had this sort of abhorrent, crass talking points and viewpoints could actually represent the United States as the American president. It reeled everybody into a hysteria, myself included at the time. And so Democrats sort of took that beginning, those feelings of, oh my God, who is this person and how dare he represent this country? And that became their battle cry for 4 years. They went on to this, the United States has reeled itself into a return of the KKK and the return of Nazism, that Donald Trump is an absolute existential threat. They took his crass talk, his crass language, his crass behavior, and they turned it into this monster of somebody this demagogue who was coming to take over. Now, I don't think any of us, if we're really to look back and be honest, could say that as we all sat there and watched The Apprentice on NBC, that we were sitting there watching this dangerous demagogue. I don't think any of us could really look back and say, oh, yeah, that was absolutely how we all felt. I don't think any of us felt that way, even as Donald Trump sat there and said, you're fired to every single person on that show. So they took this feeling, this fear, this we can't believe this person is going to be representing our country, or even just representing the Republican Party at the time. It was before he even won. And they said, this has got to stop. We've got to stop him. And we've got to stop people from agreeing with this monster. And so they went down this path of Russia collusion and Stormy Daniels, and it just went on and on and on. Then of course, the Ukraine scandal and impeachment, and did everything they absolutely could to get rid of him. Then you've got the people, just the Democratic voting base, going crazy on social media, blacklisting their own friends, cancel culture, the Me Too movement, a lot of this, which was good, and there needed to be somewhat of a reckoning, I do believe, in American culture for many of these issues, but a lot of them went too far, and I think many of us can agree they just went too far. And what happened in 2020 was Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump both fell for it. They fell for it. Their campaign messages totally fell for it. Donald Trump, rather than focusing on the very things that got him elected in 2016, reeled into this culture war with Democrats. He instead started throwing the mud just right back at them, saying, look at the violence in our streets, look at the free speech issues. These Democrats are a bunch of socialists. They just want to take over, and they're abhorrent people, and we can't allow that to happen. He got right into that rather than saying to the workers, look, we still have work to do. I couldn't get it all done in one shot. I've got more to do, but these are the things that I'm going to do for you. Rather than doing that, he went down this culture battle with Democrats. And the same thing happened with Bernie Sanders. He went into this culture battle with Donald Trump. He got right into the mix with Democrats and said, all right, let's do this. And ultimately, it failed for everybody, including the Democrats. Americans didn't want to hear this message, and yet that's the message we got. We wanted to know how they were going to solve our problems, and instead, they just slung mud at each other. This is important because the 2016 messages that won America over, those sentiments inside of the American population are not gone. They're not gone. We want those very same messages that both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders agreed on. We want those back on the table for discussion. We want those. And if Joe Biden gets into the office and he goes right back into the neoliberal Obama and Clinton policies, which he is looking like he's doing, then these problems, these feelings inside of the American population, inside of our culture, real culture of how we live our daily lives, those feelings aren't going away. And we're going to see somebody, a populist rise, who is more formidable than Donald Trump. And this is also important because for those of us who want to see that kind of change actually inside the White House, those of us who want that change on Capitol Hill, those of us who want the swamp to actually be drained, let these last 4 years be a lesson to you. Do you think, honestly, if Bernie Sanders would have won, if we lived in an alternate universe and Bernie Sanders was sitting in that Oval Office, do you think they just would have let him do anything they wanted him to do? Don't you think they would have given him the same exact treatment that they gave to Donald Trump? It would have come from the Republican side mostly, but the Republican establishment did everything they could to get rid of Donald Trump. They were maybe not as vocal about it. At first they were, and then they realized that lost favor with their voting population, and so they lost their seats, so they started to be quiet, and they started to do things backhandedly against Donald Trump. They would take papers off of his desk for him to sign. They would do backhanded things like write op-eds about how they were part of the resistance. The generals would oppose him. Don't you think that same treatment would happen to somebody like Bernie Sanders? So to support that kind of behavior, or to say, thank God Donald Trump's out and we did everything we possibly could and this is a good thing, you are marching in that same attitude to happen to the next anti-establishment candidate to sit in that Oval Office, and it might be the one you want. So let this last 4 years be a lesson to us all that what the American people want to hear are about the issues. The American people handed a referendum out to everybody involved in the mudslinging this last election cycle and said, none of us are going to take it. We don't like it. And let this be a lesson to us all that any anti-establishment candidate who is not one of them, who is not with the grain, who doesn't just go along, they're all going to be treated like they're Russian assets. You know that would have happened to Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders were sitting in that Oval Office, he absolutely, without a doubt, would have been called a Russian asset. They would have said the commie is sitting in the Oval Office. He's colluding with Russia to march communism into the United States. That's what would have happened. And they would have done everything they could to remove him from office. And as Bernie Sanders tried to remove troops from the Middle East, saying that, look, we can't remain in these endless wars, the generals would have opposed him and said he's dangerous for America. He doesn't know what he's doing. This is a horrible situation. We've got to end this. They would have all been against him. As we saw, everybody go against Donald Trump. And one side of the aisle felt it was an absolute existential crisis. And I guarantee you, if it was Bernie Sanders, they would have felt the same way. So let that be a lesson to us all moving forward. We're going to see how these next 4 years pan out. I have an idea of how they're going to go. But hopefully somebody picks up that mantle again of these issues that the American people want to talk about. Not the culture mudslinging, but the actual issues affecting our society, that are affecting our middle class American workers. And I don't know who it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be the Democrats picking that mantle back up. I think they did a really good job these last 2 election cycles of squashing that. Maybe, there's some rumblings on the Republican side. They're kind of talking about we're now the party of workers. Maybe, we'll see. Right now it could just be nice talking points in order to get people gaslit into voting for their side of the aisle. Most likely they're all bought off. But maybe somebody will pick up the mantle and actually run with it and realize that the American people want change. We no longer want these policies that are creating a massive amount of wealth inequality in our society. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Definitely like to see those subscriber numbers go up because it helps with the algorithm. The more people watch the show, the more that subscribe. Also, if you would like to support the show, the channel, those links are down below. I am a fully independent channel. I don't work for any corporation or any boss, so I am 100% independent, and I appreciate all of your support. Coming up next, you won't believe this, or maybe you will, but Hillary Clinton is being discussed for UN ambassador. That's right. We can all expect more war.